Hi guys, welcome back. Today you join me in the 2022 Ford Puma. Specifically, this is the 1 litre mild hybrid version with 125 horsepower, and this has the 7-speed automatic dual clutch gearbox in ST Line X trim. So this is the top of the range model. Now you might already have some preconceptions about the Puma. One might be that it isn't a Puma because that was a sports car back in the day, and this certainly isn't that. And the second might be because this was the final nail in the coffin for the Ford Fiesta, which is stopping production next year. The long and short of it is sales. People used to buy small hatches all the time, in which case the Fiesta was one of those specific options. But now everyone wants a small SUV or a crossover, like this, the Puma, which is now one of the best-selling cars in the UK. So I'm going to see if that's justified and see if it's a worthy Fiesta replacement, as well as talk you through the good and the bad, because there are plenty of offerings to choose from in this segment of the market, both at this price range and also in this class of car, this size. Before we get into talking about the car, let's talk pricing. So the Puma starts from around £25,000, and that gets you the titanium model, which used to be their top of the range, but now is actually bottom of the barrel. So that gives you stuff like that 8-inch touchscreen display with the full Sync 3 system that's the same across the board, cruise control, automatic lights and wipers, and the usual goodies that you'd expect on a car of this class. If you step up another £1,000, you get the ST line trim, which gives you some slightly better styling features, the sports trim and sports suspension, and also this 12.3-inch digital driver's display in the cluster in front of me here. Step up yet another £1,000 to about 27, and you get this ST Line X, which comes with 18-inch alloys, a power tailgate, the Bang & Olufsen premium audio system, and these lovely sports seats, which have like a two-tone finish to them and some red stitching throughout the interior. There is also the Vignale and also an ST model, and the ST model is the only one that comes with a hot all-petrol engine. So if you're going for a normal Puma, there's actually only 3 variants to choose from in terms of your powertrain, and they are all mild hybrid with a 1 litre EcoBoost engine. So the one that I'm in now is the 125 horsepower version, which can either come with a 6-speed manual or this 7-speed automatic dual clutch. Now there is another option, which is a slightly higher power variant, 155 horsepower with a little bit more torque, which only comes in a 6-speed manual. Now these are mild hybrid cars, and it's not the mild hybrid that you might be thinking of. So this uses what they call a hybrid belt-driven generator system, and it gives you about 20 newton meters extra of torque and about a 4% increase in acceleration. And that doesn't sound like much, but it does also increase the economy somewhat and also reduce the emissions of the car ever so slightly. But it's not what you're going to be used to if you're used to a proper hybrid system. It's not like a Prius or one of the Kia systems or something like that. It's very much its own thing. So the advantage of that is if you jump in here and you've never driven a hybrid car before, I don't think you'd really tell. There's no like electric drive from the word go. It uses the engine throughout. It literally just assists the engine. There's no electric motors that drive the wheels. So you don't really get that kind of electric sensation or that instant launch, which for people who are used to normal cars might be something that's really good. In fact, the only time you really notice the hybrid system in action is when you let off the accelerator. You get some slight regen braking, and that you notice on the digital driver's display as a little battery icon comes up when that's actually going on. But it's not actually that noticeable, to be honest with you. You certainly wouldn't really feel it in your day-to-day once you get used to it. It's kind of something you just get used to quite easily, but there's no electric motors that drive the wheels, so it feels very much like a normal car to drive. Of course, the drawback to that is you don't get any electric range and you don't get a massive increased fuel economy. Even something quite large like a Kia Sportage, for example, with the full hybrid system, even the self-charging hybrid version, because it has that electric motor, it gets you off the line in silence and a little bit quicker, and also it tends to get up to about 50 miles per gallon. In this one, I've been averaging around 40, which is not that far off the claims that Ford make, and it's perfectly acceptable for a car of this class, really. I mean, 40 mpg isn't that bad. The range in the tank is probably about 300 miles, so it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's going to be relatively cheap to run. And even driving it pretty hard, I've not been able to achieve less than 30 mpg, so that's not bad going at all. And of course, if you want a hot variant, you've got the 200 horsepower 1.5 turbo found in the ST model. That's only mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox, and it is fantastic. I've driven it on track earlier this year, and it's well worth a go in if you're considering a hot hatch. So then let's talk about the best bit of the Puma, in my opinion, and that is the way that it drives. Now, it's not the fastest thing in the world, don't get me wrong, but it's really, really nippy round town. That EcoBoost engine is such a peach in the city areas where you're darting in and out of traffic and that kind of thing. It's really, really nice. And it's just enough power for those situations, and it never feels like it's screaming either. It's a 3-cylinder unit, so it's got a nice little thrum to it. It's got a decent amount of torque thanks to that electric assistance, and overall just feels really peppy when you need it to be. And this 7-speed gearbox isn't too bad either. I'm going to give it some beans around this roundabout and just see what it's all about, because this chassis is actually really, really good. And no matter how hard I've tried, it's almost impossible to get it to let go. It doesn't understeer. It just handles everything you throw at it, and I'm up to the speed limit already. It's really nippy for what it is. Gears are selected by this traditional gear lever, which is a little bit disappointing considering Ford's other offerings now have the rotary dial. This is a bit old-fashioned, and I really don't like the way you have to go right down to the bottom for manual mode, but of course you can just take over with the paddles, which are okay. So yeah, it's not the end of the world, but it just feels a little bit cheap to have that, and the actual gear gator is really nasty and horrible, but it's a very small complaint, to be honest. Everything else in here is Fiesta, and that's no bad thing. The layout is quite nice. In this particular model, you've got red stitching everywhere. You've got this carbon effect trim, which looks really good. There's not really much ambient lighting besides in the door pockets, which are a reasonable size, to be fair. And cabin space overall is good. It's basically an inflated Fiesta. If you've been in one of those, you know what it's like. The physical climate controls are really nice, and you've got 3-stage automatic on the climate as well, which I really enjoy because it means you've got a little bit more control over how the velocity of the air coming in is when you just want it on automatic. You don't have to have it at full blast straight away, so that's really nice. And of course it's a great winter companion being a Ford, because you've got the heated quick clear windscreen, you've got heated steering wheel as standard, heated seats, all that good stuff. So yeah, really, really nice kind of little thing for the winter. It's roomy enough in the front here for me at 6 foot to stretch my legs out nicely in a nice driving position. Feels relatively high up, not SUV high, but definitely higher than a normal hatch. And in the back, I've still got room to sit behind myself, which is always a good sign. Legroom isn't the best, and you've got a transmission tunnel that's quite steep as well, but it's not the end of the world. You can still fit 2 adults comfortably back there, or 3 smaller children, and you've got the ISOFIX points that you'll need for the kiddies as well. Headroom's pretty decent too. You can see I've got enough here, and my seat's in quite a high position, so there's room for more as well if I lower it. It is reduced slightly by this twin panoramic sunroof that I've got here, but to be honest, it's an option that I would have, just because it's really, really nice. It really brightens up the cabin, because otherwise it'd be quite dark with all this black interior. But yeah, overall, and it moves around nicely as well. It tilts up and then it comes all the way back, and you've got some sunshades which you can bring forward as well manually. The only thing that I have a complaint about the sunroof is that there is a bit of a rattle coming from it in this particular car, especially when the Bang & Olufsen sound system is turned right up and it's kind of booming a little bit. The subwoofer kicks in and I'm getting like a really annoying rattle from this sunroof, so that is a bit frustrating. But you know, again, a small complaint, and it would probably be sorted under warranty, I would have thought, if necessary as well. It might be just a bit of trim loose somewhere. I don't mind the layout. The steering wheel's quite nice. It's a nice shape, it's a nice size, it's squidgy enough. You've got this kind of perforated leather, which I'm not convinced about. I'm sure it'll wear nicely over time, but the first touch I had of it, it's a bit like, you know, when you go around someone's house and their toilet paper isn't quite the same as yours. It's a little bit like that. It just, yeah. But you've got physical buttons for everything, which is nice, and the infotainment system is decent to use. It's not the fastest in the world, nor is it the most modern, but it gets the job done, and you've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay on there, so what more do you need, really? The 12.3-inch digital cluster that I've got on this car is quite nice as well. I prefer it in sports mode because it gives it like this nice black and red look. It's just a little bit nicer than the standard mode that you get, which is all the full blue, but it does display everything you need it to. It's definitely not as slick as some of the systems you'll find in like the Volkswagen Audi group cars, for example, and it doesn't have any fancy 3D effects like you'd find in, say, a Peugeot, but it still does the trick. It's nicer to have than the analog dials, and there's a few different things you can pull up there, but it does almost seem a bit wasteful having a screen this size when you can't get things on it such as maps and that kind of thing, but we can forgive it. It still looks okay, and again, I'll just be looking over here for the Apple CarPlay anyway. It does have adaptive cruise control, and it does have a lot of safety systems, and I find them to be a little bit less invasive. Whereas the Kias and the Hyundais, they're always beeping at me every time I stray over a line. This doesn't interfere too much, so I think for someone who gets a little bit nervous driving, or is just very confident in their driving, I think that this will be a little bit nicer to use out of the box. It's a shame there's no other way to operate the touchscreen. There's no kind of like rotary dial or anything like that. All that's down here by the manual handbrake is just the controls for changing the driving modes, traction control, the automatic park assist, and turning off start stop and things like that. But that's fine. I mean, it's not to be expected in this class of car at this price point. I just think that some of the Korean rivals, for example, like the Kias, the Hyundais, and also stuff like the Peugeot and the DS3, they kind of just have a bit of a more special interior, and they definitely have sort of more tech involved as well. There's definitely some better cameras and that kind of thing. This one does have a reverse camera, but that's it. There's no 360 cameras, no top down, nothing like that. The definition is okay, but not great. As I say, it's adequate. It all gets the job done, and it feels quite nice to the touch in here. There's some scratchy plastics here and there, but again, it's based off the Fiesta, so you can't really expect much more than that. The boot is really well engineered. It's absolutely cavernous. That's mostly thanks to what Ford call the MegaBox, which is a posh name for a massive well in the floor with a drainage plug. And that doesn't sound particularly overwhelming, but actually it's genius. It's really deep, so you can store stuff in it, but also it's entirely waterproof, so you can use it if you're out camping or something, or you know, on a hike or whatever it might be. You've got some muddy shoes, you can just stick them in there, you can hose them down in there, and you've got the option to just pull the plug out and drain it. You could use it as an ice box for some drinks. You could use it to do your washing in. The world's your oyster, really. I saw Rory Reid stick some goldfish in there. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that, but the point is, it's something you don't find in any other cars, and it is really, really useful for those family adventures. The covers all stay out of the way, and if you put the cover back and you just have it as normal, it's still got slightly more space than a Volkswagen T-Cross and some of the other rivals. The turning circle is absolutely fantastic as well. It just feels so manoeuvrable. Visibility is not too bad. I mean, there's a bit of a blind spot at the back, but you do have blind spot monitoring in the mirrors, which is nice. The visibility out the side windows is really good, and it doesn't feel big. Like, I'm going down a really narrow road now, and I can tell I'm a bit higher up than in a hatchback, but overall it kind of feels hatchback size. Like, I can see the end of the bonnet really easily, and it feels quite short at the front. The back, it sort of haunches out a bit like a Kia EV6, but not dramatically so. I can still see kind of where I'm placing the vehicle at all times. It doesn't feel too big or too wide, and it doesn't feel long either. Like, when I look out the sides, it doesn't look like I'm commanding some massive land yacht or a limo or something like that, like you feel in some of these other SUV type cars, because it's still kind of Fiesta size. It's just inflated, and I think that's what everyone wants right now. Of course, a lot of the rivals, they do look a little bit more like SUVs. This is more sort of coupe-ish, if you like, but I think that that's just a nice design touch. Right, I'm going to hit some more technical roads now. Oh, it gets up to speed really nicely. Let's just get the windows open a little bit. I just want to be able to explore a little bit. I'm going to put it in manual mode, so now it comes up with the gears on the dash. It's got a nice little thrum to it. And the dual clutch box is nice too. It doesn't feel rapid by any stretch of the imagination, but it's nippy. And what I've been continuously impressed with is just the way it handles. The suspension is firm, but not horrendously so, you know. It absorbs the bumps nicely. It feels quite well damped, but sporty at the same time. And of course, this being the ST Line X, it does have that sport suspension. So if you went for like the normal titanium model, it would be a little bit more plush than this. But yeah, I think it just feels really nice. There is a little bit of body roll, but nothing too dramatic. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall over or anything stupid like that. It doesn't feel like it's too high or that it's on stilts or anything. It feels comfortable, but still sporty. I definitely think there are some rivals out there that will be a little bit more plush if you're looking for a more luxurious ride, but this is supposed to be quite a fun alternative to your average crossover, and I think that that's where this does really well. It doesn't do the tech as well as the Koreans, and it doesn't do kind of the luxury of living features like, yeah, for example, Kia and Hyundai do. Some of the things that they put in their cars are just really innovative, but the practical stuff, it does nicely. The physical controls, you know, the 3-stage automatic climate control, the MegaBox in the boot, the quick clear windscreen. It's just practical, and it's a fun alternative. I feel like I'm having much more of a blast on this road in this car than I would in those rival cars. And that's kind of what the plucky little Fiesta's always been about. So that's why I kind of think this is almost a decent rival to that. A lot of people are upset about the Fiesta's demise, but to be honest, this is built on the same platform. It's pretty much got the same engine choice. It handles almost the same. Like, it's just a bigger Fiesta. And if you keep that in mind, then the death of the Fiesta, it doesn't need mourning quite as much. Of course, it's a shame, but this is a blast. Even with this tiny little engine, I'm still having fun on this road. I'm still getting an average right now of 38 miles per gallon. I've got a massive grin on my face. And yeah, I can just dart down here. It's small, it handles great. I've got enough feedback through the wheel. Full steering always feels quite nice. And I'm really pushing it now, but I just don't feel like the car's going to give up on me. Our turning circle is just brilliant. And the ride height is just enough to clear everything. See, I'm even going to make that, and that doesn't even look possible. And there we go, and we pick up again. That 3-cylinder thrum. And I can almost forgive the fact that you're getting better value with a Kia or a Hyundai just because of how good this feels to drive. It's no Fiesta ST, don't get me wrong, but if you're looking for a hot hatch, then try the Puma ST, because definitely it is good fun, especially with that 6-speed manual. The only thing I'm not too keen on, and I think it's a combination of the gearbox and also the 3-cylinder engine, is that when you first set off in this, if you try and punch it a little bit too hard, it kind of judders a little bit, almost like you're on the edge of stalling a manual with the clutch. Again, it doesn't happen all the time, and you do get used to it, but it's just a little bit disappointing because you expect it to be silky smooth with an auto. But the actual gear changes themselves, really nice. It just, every time I think it's going to understeer, even things that, like, if I was driving my Cupra, I would understeer. This just keeps going, going, going. I know it's not as quick, but the turning circle and just the way the chassis has been developed, it's really, really good. And if you've driven a Fiesta in the last few years, you'll be really familiar with it. It feels so similar. It's just that kind of extra body roll that you have to get used to. And when you're done having fun darting around, you can relax and be mellow. And it's a fantastic little city car. It's not too big. It's not too complicated. Everything in here works as it should. I've not had any issues at all with the car in my time that I've had it. And the road noise isn't even that bad with these wheels either, to be honest with you. It's quite a nice place to be. The Bang & Olufsen sound system in this one is really nice too. It's not the best in the world, but it's certainly a step up from the standard system. Let's stamp on it again. It doesn't sound too bad. It doesn't sound too strained at most times either. The only time that you really notice that it's a small engine is when you try and do an overtake on the motorway. That's where it's going to start struggling, because whilst it's really nippy around town with that electric assistance, on the motorway, when it really needs some extra grunt, it's not there. You're going to be able to live with that if you don't use it for that. You know, it's not going to be the best autobahn cruiser in the world, put it that way, but most people are going to use these to dart around town, drop the kids off at school, go on little adventures with the family, and that's exactly what it is designed to do, and I think it does it very well. It's a shame that it doesn't feel more special in here. It's nice, it's well built, but it's not special really. It looks just nice enough. The stuff like your Kias, your Hyundais have got some extra quality of life features, and they just feel a little bit more special inside usually at this price point, with more tech and bigger screens. And obviously the Volkswagen Audi group stuff, you're going to get stuff like the maps on the virtual cockpit and things like that. So that would be nice to have. That's something that is missing with this car here. But I think what you buy this for is because it's a little bit different. It doesn't look like an SUV. It looks a little bit more sporty. I think this example here that I've got, this one is about 33 grand, and it's pretty much the perfect spec, I would say. It's finished in solar silver, which is a premium paint colour, which Ford makes some fantastic colours. This one in particular, it looks almost like that flat Nardo grey type colour, but it's got like a metallic finish to it, which is almost pearlescent. It looks really, really nice. And you've got these diamond cut wheels, which look fantastic. The gloss black details, LED lights front and rear. It just looks the business. And the pan roof definitely helps as well because of the contrast and the way it opens. There are mixed opinions though. A few of the people that I've shown this car, they say, I just don't like the way it looks at all. Some people say it looks a little bit gopping at the front, which, yeah, I can kind of see that. Slightly Ford Ultima vibes, I don't know. But personally, I like it in a sea of small SUVs. I do think it stands out as a little bit different, but I do think that lesser trim levels, such as the titanium, won't really look the part. I would say if you're looking to get a small crossover SUV type car, or if you've been looking in the market for even like a small hatchback, this is definitely a more practical size, and honestly, you get used to it so quickly, it doesn't feel like I'm driving a big car at all. It just feels like a Fiesta on stilts, and that's kind of what it was designed to be, let's be honest. Ford have got some great stuff coming, and I'm really excited to be working with them in the future to show you some of those cars. And until then, I would definitely consider one of these if you're looking for a family car that's quite fun to drive and still relatively economical and good to run. The only thing is, if you're looking for something that's a little bit more special on the inside or has that slightly newer tech, maybe look at something like a Peugeot 2008, a DS3, a Skoda Kamiq, or let's not forget Britain's current best-selling car, the Nissan Qashqai. That has currently been updated quite recently, and that seems like one to watch as well. So there's so many rivals out there, and it's going to be a hard choice. But keep watching these reviews. I'll keep bringing them to you. Until then, thank you to Ford for sending out the car. Thank you to you guys for watching. And don't forget, if you're looking for a lease deal on a new Puma, check out my Lease Loco affiliate link in the description below, where you can find the best deals on this car, and it helps out the channel as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.